The following compilation features unsettling and spine-chilling tales sourced from Reddit's horror communities. Reader discretion is strongly advised. These narratives may contain graphic descriptions, psychological distress, and themes that could unsettle sensitive individuals. Proceed with caution, as immersion into these eerie stories may provoke fear, unease, and sleep disturbances. Enter this realm of Reddit's creepy horror stories at your own risk, as the line between reality and the macabre may blur within these chilling narratives. I first got him in January. I was volunteering at the animal shelter when he was brought in, skinny and shivering. Lou said he'd been left outside, probably dumped there by an abusive owner, as their first and only act of kindness towards him. He was terrified. I brought him home with me that evening. By February, my hands were covered in little scratches, and I'd well and truly learnt my lesson about cuddles. He was a very proper cat. If he sat too still, you could almost mistake him for an ornate china ornament, with his sleek black coat and pointed ears. Even though he'd been through an awful time of it, you could just tell there was a very proud cat waiting to reappear. I named him Raymond, which he seemed to approve of. He started eating his dinner on the floor next to me, and would occasionally let me stroke his head without a hiss. By March, he would come to greet me at the door when I got home from work, skipping down the stairs from wherever he'd been dozing. His ribs had disappeared beneath his healthy coat, and his shiny green eyes seemed to smile at me. We were both doing well in April. My once scared cat had now become a confident, cuddly boy. I'd get to kiss him on the head goodbye as I left for my first few dates with Owen. Owen was charming, and everything I'd ever dreamed of. I'd spend evenings with him in fancy restaurants, laughing away and hanging on to his every word. One evening in May, I was walking home from another wonderful evening when I tripped and fell smack bang in the middle of the pavement, leaving angry red grazes on each hand and knee. I hobbled home feeling sorry for myself and was greeted by a familiar mew at the door. I tried my best to give myself some first aid, and when I climbed into bed, Raymond appeared at my side. He sniffed at the haphazard plasters and stared at me, his green eyes big and curious. "Nothing to worry about, Ray. I just tripped is all," I told him. Owen was always joking about how clumsy I could be. Raymond seemed to frown, wiggling his black tail in the air. Then he leaned forward and gently pressed his head against my grazes. I'm not sure how he did it, but his eyes seemed to roll back into his head, and I could have sworn they then began to glow. He sat like that, completely still for a few seconds before drifting off to sleep. When I peeled the plasters off the next morning, every mark had disappeared. I couldn't believe it. I spent ages running my fingers over my now smooth skin. Raymond just sat in the doorway and stared, his head tilted to the side. I wondered if I'd dreamed the whole thing, but in June it happened again. I'd been moving my things into Owen's flat when I'd caught my finger on his door latch, leaving a rather deep cut. Owen just tutted and went to pick up the box I'd dropped. Later, after Raymond had inspected our new home, he came for his evening cuddle. Owen was at the pub by then, and he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The poor cat was still so wary of certain people. I felt guilty for moving us in with Owen in a way, but he had insisted, and how could I say no? Raymond came to sit on my lap, and upon noticing my finger, his eyes immediately rolled back into his head, and definitely glowed this time. I took off my bloody bandage to find again that any trace of the wound had vanished. Raymond purred softly as I stared at him, mouth agape. By the end of August, Raymond had healed a fair few scrapes and bruises for me. I'm ever so clumsy, of course, which Owen always ridiculed. If I'd known better, I'd have said he liked seeing me upset. Sometimes he would come home drunk and accidentally push me. On one occasion, he did this when I was cooking at the hob, and Raymond seemed to use all of his might healing my seeping burn. I spent an awful lot of time in pain, and the rest lonely. I'd stopped volunteering at the animal shelter a few weeks before, when Owen and I decided I should be working more hours to help pay the rent. I missed Lou, and I missed my friends. We lived quite far from my parents too now, and I missed having friendly conversations that weren't just with Owen on a good day. I still had Raymond, though. September went by in a bit of a blur. I found myself stuck in an unnerving state of trying to do everything just right. I would walk home from work slowly, savoring my time in the cold and the dark, but not too slowly, or Owen would question where I had been. And with who? I didn't see anyone nowadays. I would make sure the dinner I made was exactly to Owen's standards, even though I knew that most of the time there would be a tiny, unseen detail that would set him off. He'd leave in a huff, taking my car to the pub round the corner. I'd sit in silence with Raymond while he was gone. I felt trapped. Raymond would give me a nudge, or a purr, anything to get my attention, but I was frozen. I only moved again when I heard the door slam. I would look down at Raymond. He knew he was in for a long night too. In October, on Halloween, things reached rock bottom. I was lying on the floor, staring at the ceiling when I heard Raymond gently push open the door. I'd been so worried about him. Owen had come home drunk again and almost tripped over Raymond, who was sleeping peacefully on the rug. I'd instinctively jumped up, rushing to keep my precious cat safe. Owen didn't like that. Now I was on the floor and I couldn't get up. I couldn't do much of anything anymore. "I'm sorry, Raymond," I whispered, feeling my lip begin to bleed again. I started to cry and the tears stung my swollen eyes. "I'm sorry I brought us here." He gently brushed his face against my blackened cheek, and I felt like dirt. My tears splashed against the cold floorboards. Raymond deserved so much more than being stuck with me. I couldn't even keep him safe. The door slammed suddenly. I had to grip my teeth to keep from screaming when my broken bones ground together as I jumped. Owen was home. His heavy footsteps dragged through the hall, the sickly smell of whiskey surrounding him like a storm cloud. He swayed as he came into the room. His bloodshot eyes quickly focused on me. He walked over and let out a chuckle, giving my snapped leg a swift kick. "Get up, then," he sneered. Every muscle in my body was screaming at me to move, but the sharp pain in my chest pinned me to the floor. My breath was coming in shallow gasps, and my broken ribs felt like knives carving into my lungs. "Pathetic," Owen spat. "Laying there feeling sorry for yourself. This is your fault. It always is." Raymond began to growl beside me, but Owen ignored it. He dug his fingers into my swollen face. "You're completely useless now," Raymond hissed. Something had changed in him. His sleek black form, normally so calm, was now tensed. His muscles rippled beneath his fur, and his green eyes honed in on Owen. They began to glow eerily under the flickering light. Owen laughed, releasing his grip on my jaw. "Oh, look at this. Your stupid cat. He'll protect you." Before Owen could reach out for him, something in the air shifted. The pressure dropped, and the room felt heavy. Raymond's growl deepened, sounding far more primal. His eyes weren't just glowing anymore, they were burning. Owen staggered back, his face contorting into confusion and then pain. "What the hell?" he started, his words cut off by a scream. I could only watch, wide-eyed, as Owen's body began to jerk violently. His arm twisted, the bones snapping with a sickening crunch. He screamed again, the sound ripping from his throat as his skin began to stretch and split. Hot blood oozed from the cracks like lava. My own injuries, the burns, the broken bones, the bruises began to fade. I felt them peeling from my body as Raymond had done 100 times before. But this time he was putting them straight into Owen. His knees buckled as another snap echoed through the room. His leg was bent at an impossible angle, the flesh tearing as though he was being pulled apart from the inside out. "Raymond, no," I whispered, but the word felt hollow. Could I even stop him? Did I even want to, really? The cat's gaze never left Owen. His tail flicked in a deliberate motion, and Owen screamed again. This time it was louder, higher pitched, as his ribs caved inwards with a wet, crunching sound. Despite everything that he'd done, I hoped that the alcohol was dulling some of the pain, at least a tiny bit. Owen convulsed as his spine twisted, vertebrae snapping like dry twigs. Blood sprayed from his mouth and his hands clawed uselessly in the air. He was reaching out for me. Over the next few minutes I squeezed my eyes closed as I listened to every crack and snap. It was slow and deliberate. Raymond was savoring this. Finally, Owen collapsed onto his front. His body was barely recognizable. and a shudder racked through me as I realized it was a mirror image to how mine had looked only an hour before. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. He looked at me, trying to plead, his eyes wide with terror. He was a wounded animal. I don't know what came over me, but I looked over at Raymond and nodded. I looked away when my cat's jaw began to unhinge, stretching wider than it should ever be able to. I still heard, though, the sound of Owen disappearing into the gaping maw. I heard the crunch. When I turned back around, Raymond was a cat once more. He licked his paw and used it to wipe a drop of blood from his sleek head. There was no sign of the monster I had seen only seconds before. There was no trace at all of Owen. Raymond purred contentedly. It's December now and things are much different. My parents hug me goodbye on their way to work, and usually Dad makes me breakfast even when I insist I'm not hungry. He says I'm much too thin. In the evening, we spend time together as a family, the wood burner crackling and Raymond sleeping soundly in front of it. I tell myself that I'm safe now, that it's over. But as I look at him sleeping there, I wonder what else he's capable of. I don't know if I'll ever feel like myself again. I don't really remember who she is. I have nightmares most nights. The sound of shouting will echo through my head, followed by the snapping of bones. My mum helps me talk about what happened. Well, most of it. The important thing is that it's all over. While I've been recovering, I've been trying my best to do some research. I'm still not 100% sure what breed Raymond is, though. I just know that he's a very, very good cat. I wished I could get help, and I don't know if I'm here asking for help. I mean, this is the only place I can think of where I can be believed, at least. But I don't know if anyone can actually help me. I have even thought of telling my therapist, but she can't do anything and she'll think I'm out my mind, and I can swear that's not the case. I'm sorry if this is poorly written, but first of all, I'm not an expert, and second, and most importantly, I'm too scared and terrified to be able to think how to write properly. But enough rambling, I'll cut to the chase. I have a very strong sense of smell, or at least I think other people aren't like this. I can even smell myself, which I know others can't. I can tell people's scent beyond the products they might be wearing. I've had this skill, for lack of a better word, since I can remember. Most people smell like humans, I guess. With variations, of course, but the type of smell is pretty much the same. Some people, though, have a particular smell that really stands out and is not like others. One example was my grandmother. She had a very peculiar smell which made her stand out from the rest. It was unique. She had it her whole life, and it was very prevalent when she was around. Throughout my life, I have met a few people with a unique scent, just like my grandmother, but they haven't been many. One of them, however, is the man I married. The first thing I noticed about him when we met 18 years ago was his smell. It's undescribable, but it was always there, even if he had just showered and used perfume. I got used to his smell, and to me, it's like his identity. We were friends for many years, and although we always liked each other, life sent us different ways and couldn't really be together. But we always kept in touch, and every time we could see each other, we wouldn't miss a chance. Every time I saw him, his smell was there, and it felt like home. Years went by like this, until he returned to my life last year. This time, we as both worked hard so we could stay together, and we did. We got married, but when he arrived this time, his smell was gone, completely gone. I have tried to brush it off. I have tried to ignore it or forget about it, to no avail. The more time goes by, the more I am more scared about this. Where did his smell go? There's absolutely no trace of it. The more time goes by, I can't help but feel and think that it's not really him, but someone or something that looks like him. This is terrifying. If it's not him, who or what did I marry to? And worst of all, where is the love of my life? How do I recover him? Will he forgive me for believing his copy? What do I even do when I don't even know what I'm facing? Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. If you dare to explore further, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling tales of horror and the supernatural. Remember, the shadows hold endless mysteries, waiting to be unveiled. Stay tuned for more bone-chilling stories. as we continue to traverse the eerie depths of the unknown together. Until next time, may your dreams be free from the haunting echoes of our tales. Or perhaps not.